Welcome everybody to my podcast, Big Little Small Talk. I'm Megan O'Hara-Sullivan and I love to talk, but I also love to listen. If you're new here, welcome. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoy the episode. So welcome Andrew Macdonald, craftsman, artist, aren't you? Technician, privet master. In fact, we're sitting here in your shed and it says Mr. Privet. Now, I met you. No, I didn't meet you then, but I did, after we'd known each other for a couple of years, I did a course with you at Cobb Co, where we were crafting rustic furniture out of privet.
I remember it well.
Well, I remember it well too, because I think you virtually made my stool and I've got it at home as a piece that I show off to people that I did this privet course. So tell me how you came to be working at Cobb Co and sort of what your true love of craft and art and craftsmanship.
It's a very long and winding journey, but I've been at Cobb Co for almost 10 years. And I came there directly from the uni where I'd worked for 20 years.
Oh, wow.
At USQ. And I was in the arts department as the studio manager. So I looked after all the studios. Mm-hmm. When I first got there, I'd come to study art. And I got work when I was a student and it just kept building up until I was full-time. I never left being a student, really.
That sounds ideal. That's what we all want, isn't it?
It was a great job. But 20 years is a long time in any one job. And this one was offered to me.
Right. And what was your role to be when you went to work at Cobb Co? And is it still the same now?
It was called the factory manager, which was a bit of a misnomer because there was only one person to manage. And
that wasn't yourself, was it?
No, there was someone else there, a facilities sort of guy, and a team of volunteers.
Right.
Which was great, and the volunteers are a mixed group, older blokes, various skills. Some of them are ex-tradies, some of them are ex-farmers. And I've still got a core of those guys, but I no longer manage anyone. So I'm now called the factory supervisor.
Oh, good.
But anyway.
So, and what are you doing with these volunteers, this group of men?
I just keep them from being lonely, I think, really.
Right.
No, that's not true. They come and help me on different projects.
And what type of projects are they? I know that you make wheels, don't you? Wagon wheels?
Yeah, we do restoration work on vehicles. So we're actually building a buckboard at the moment.
And a buckboard would be?
The equivalent of a ute.
All right.
Yeah, so it had a tray back, slatted floor, 2 seats, more than likely, a couple of horses out the front. Very lightweight and robust. Okay. No fancy paint work.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why are you doing that? Like, has someone commissioned that, or?
No, it came to us a long time ago before I got there as a wreck. And it was pulled out of a station near Longreach by the main roads department. Somehow Jeff Powell, the curator, realised what it was, and we don't actually own a buckboard. That's why we've got it.
Right.
And it turns out they were fairly popular, fairly common. We just don't own one. Okay. Highfields, for instance, at the Pioneer Village has 4 or 5 of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And are most of the projects that you work on, are they things that people have donated to Cobb Co, or you procure them, or?
The previous one was a donation. That was the butcher's cart from McDonald's down at Withcott, Murphy's Creek area. Just had to make wheels for that one. It was pretty good nick. The one prior to that was the GS wagon, the army wagon, which we bought at great expense. It was like 15 or 16,000.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
okay.
It was from an auction and everyone wanted it.
Okay.
It was probably one of the most well-preserved original army wagons in the country.
Uh-huh. And what did you need to do with it? Did you need to make something or fix something?
Yeah. I decided we'd pull the floor out because it had been replaced with tongue and groove flooring from a house.
Right.
By a farmer with roofing nails. It had been bought by a farmer from the army in 1946 or 47. And there were a few other broken bits and pieces that we decided, but we made a point of not blending them in. You know, we made it obvious where we'd been.
It's a bit like architecture now, isn't it? With heritage architecture, you don't want it to match. You want it to be completely different, so you can see exactly. Oh, juxtapose. That's one of my favourite words. The juxtaposition.
Yeah, but that's right. You don't. We stamped everything C plus C with the year that we made it, because all the other parts on the GS wagon, it's just an army thing. Every metal bit is stamped with the date and the factory.
Interesting, right?
Yeah.
And will that now then go into the Cobb Co, the museum, as a museum piece?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the buckboard will do the same, but Jeff the curator, my mate, he's been there for 30 years and he's never actually gone for a drive in any of the vehicles. So before the buckboard goes into the collection, where it'll never move again, we're going to take it on the road.
Okay, right.
Our old mate Bob Edwards out here, he's going to give us a couple of horses and we're going to go for a drive.
Okay. So the other pieces, they haven't been taken out either?
They won't be either.
So how do you know that the wheels will go round, or that the
in which one?
Bits? Oh, I don't know.
The buckboard, I've worked on the axles. I've actually rebuilt the axles. So hopefully they're strong enough.
Yeah, that's right.
But the others, you wouldn't take any of the other vehicles on the road. They've been inside for too long and dried out.
Now, yes.
You know, they've been some of them probably been indoors for 50 years. So it's protected them from rot, but it doesn't protect them from drying out and everything shrinks. And
so how do you know what to do? I wouldn't imagine there'd be too much looking up of the internet of how to fix a pre-war vehicle. Or
no, not too much.
Are you just going by sort of sense or what you think is the right...
Particularly with the army stuff, that was really well documented. We've even found from photographs that we built the wheels wrong.
Right.
We built the wheels that we had to rebuild for a cannon recently. We build them as we thought, from the inside outwards. Looking at photos, the army actually built them from the outside in. So,
what was the logic of that? Do you know?
Well, they were prefabricated parts, and they actually socket together differently than what we work. It was a technical thing.
So, when you found out then that it was you built them incorrectly, what did you do then?
Nothing. We managed to get them together.
Right. Okay.
It probably just wasn't the most efficient way. And when you're churning out 60,000 wagons from a factory to get blown up in World War I, they worked out which was the fastest way to make them.
And what do you love working on the most? Is it some sort of vehicle type thing, or what other things do you do?
I wouldn't say that. I mean, that's my job. It's not a... It's really interesting, but it's not a passion, I don't think.
No.
I still love making stuff. What I really love is I make stuff out of found objects. That's my thing.
Mm-hmm. What sort of things do you make? We're looking around. I can see
That's a kaleidoscope.
A kaleidoscope, right?
And it's made from a 1970s lampshade, the gearbox off a grinder, and photocopier parts.
Yeah. Right.
That there is made from recycled rosewood from the Empire Theatre that they were throwing away.
Right. And what...
That's a peep show, a very naughty peep show.
I think I'll steer away from talking about that.
It's got 3 reels inside, and, that's all made from just found objects and recycled, and that's why I came to privet. It's like, no one really wants a privet. Right. You cut it down and you make things with it.
And where do you get the privet from, mostly?
Mostly it's harvested out at Kabbalah.
Okay, and is that sort of on the roadside?
No, it's in a reserve that the council look after. Not very well, sorry.
That's another hat. Well...
but they do. They've been through and slashed a whole lot of it and poisoned it, and that's the end. It's just full of huge weeds now.
Right.
And I go in there and I harvest it, and one of the local landholders, a farmer, he comes and talks to me, and, I've known him for years now. He comes every time he sees me harvesting. He comes and has a chat.
He comes and has a chat.
Yeah.
With your courses, Andrew, are you still doing your courses? People can come and learn. I know there was a whole lot of different skills in that course that I did, from a lady who was building a coat and hat rack that looked like it needed to be covered, and right down to my little tiny stool.
Yeah.
So lots of different sort of skills and ambitions. And
well, I used to work setting up the McGregor Summer School, for instance, for many years at the uni, and it's really interesting watching the tutors approach. Some of them, for instance, they make exactly the same thing. Exactly the same, or they paint exactly the same picture. When I run a course, I try to let people's imagination go a bit, so I let them make what they want, but I'm there sort of trying to plug holes and keep a top on it. And
for my memory, we didn't use any sort of modern tools, did we? I think we slashed down the edge of the log with like a
draw knife.
A draw knife. And explain what a draw knife is
it's
to the
a
uninitiated.
two-handed tool with a very sharp blade in between, and it's pulled towards the body. And they were you see them on a lot of old farms. They're a fairly ubiquitous tool. Army engineers carried them even in the Second World War. Just a general. He's holding one in his hand as we speak, and the feel of that. Do you ever make your own tool? Yes, I make a lot. I actually had an exhibition at Toowoomba Regional Art Gallery, and then it went to Craft Queensland, where I made a set of tools that took me a year and a half, forged them because I did the blacksmithing course.
Oh, right.
And then with those tools, I made a set of furniture.
Right.
Just using those tools.
Oh, how amazing.
So, I'll quickly grab one, but yeah, there are many, many of them.
He's walked away from the microphone, folks, so it might be a bit hard to tell. But we're coming back. We've got a mallet-y-looking thing.
Yeah. A curved spoke shave called a scorp.
And that's for...
hollowing out seats.
Seats, yes, of course it is.
Then there's a bevel gauge. It's a pretty simple...
Right.
Yeah. So, I made a full set of woodworking tools.
Made a full set of tools. So that was another question that I wanted to ask you. You have at Cobb Co, you have a lost trades fair, don't you? And what sort of things are there?
It's a shame.
Do you display there? Or?
No, we've had to cancel it 2 years in a row because of COVID. But there were 60 artisans, everything from candle makers, weavers, chair weavers doing things out of cane, blacksmiths, leather workers. Oh, wonderful. A carnival of crafts.
Yeah. So 2 years, but still plans to keep it going if possible?
So.
Yeah. And were you organising that?
No,
or were you
Wendy and I from Cobb Co went down to Lost Trades down in Victoria where it originates, and we talked to the organisers of that and convinced them that Cobb Co was where they needed to expand.
Perfect fit, yeah. I know I have been on in previous years, and it's very men heavy, isn't it?
It tends
Would you say?
to be.
But it's great, something, because I guess you look at this and you talk about your volunteers there at Cobb Co, you were really pre-men's shed, weren't you?
I guess so. In fact, people still come in here, and it happened a couple of times today, come into Cobb Co and say, it's like a big men's shed. Yeah, you sort of can't get away from that analogy.
But I think what I love, and I don't know from you as being an instructor or whether you've heard it all before, years ago I did a wood turning course, and I did a mosaic course, and I did all these serial course doer. But what I loved was the chat between the other people doing it, because they're people that you would probably not normally, they're just from different walks of life, and then you suddenly are thrown together in a room and you're sort of finding out about each other, but doing it with working with your hands.
Yeah, you're right, there's not a common background to them at all. I don't know why, but I've had 2 or 3 doctors do the courses. Maybe it's just a big mental break from
and I think not doing anything with your hands, there's something that, well, maybe they are, I suppose, if they're surgeons, but you want to get in there and feel that earth and do that manual work. But Andrew, you haven't always been an artist, have you? You did something in your earlier life, and what was that?
Well, I went to uni in the 70s. I directed all my high school years to getting to uni to study biology. And I got there, and I didn't do very well. And I went surfing for about 3 years, working in factories and wasting my life away, and then I just joined the Air Force.
The Air Force?
Yeah.
Right.
A couple of different pushes, but one of them was I was just going nowhere, and the opportunity came up. And I was in WA, that's where I joined, at Perth, where I grew up. And I had no idea what I was even going to do in the Air Force. But they tell you what you're going to do.
Yes.
Yeah. So the aptitude test came back, you need to be a mechanic. So I ended up being an aircraft technician, engine fitter. So I worked for 6 years and mostly on F-111s.
Had you grown up in a family of handy
Handy,
people?
yes, but
practical?
Not tradespeople.
Right.
My dad was a farm advisor and Mum was a home person, but she was really creative, good sewer and all that. But Dad, on his weekends, he built a shed and then built a workbench and had a toolbox. And in fact, that's his toolbox. Oh, it's over there.
Dad's toolbox.
Dad's toolbox, yeah.
Nice, lovely.
So, and he was also a really good drawer and painter, and he used to paint Mum nude, and there was we used to paintings of Mum naked. Too much info, Dad. But no, he was a very good drawer, and on weekends we'd go off in the bush and he'd paint landscapes and rocks and stuff.
Okay.
And every time we went to Perth on holidays, we'd always go to the art gallery.
Okay.
And that was just how I grew up. But I had the choice of doing art or biology, chose biology because I thought it was more practical.
And what did you want to do with the biology degree?
Ecology and ants. I was really fascinated with ant ecology. Yeah.
Right.
Because they're, real movers in the forest.
Yeah. But what I suppose what I was sort of angling at, or I was curious about, was that you'd gone from being in the military to being an adult student of art.
Yes.
And how did you find that juxtaposition, as we say.
Huge. But no, the contrast really, there was a couple of years in between, and I went working as a diesel fitter because I just didn't like aircraft anymore. Too much stress. You know, you can't just park an aircraft on the side of the road when it breaks down.
No.
So I went diesel fitting, and in the end I absolutely hated it. And it was greasy and unappreciated and heavy, and worked in the mines, worked on road building up North Queensland and all sorts of stuff. But in the back of my mind, I'm going, I'm wasting my time. And I went furniture making for a little while, for about a year and a half, furniture making. And the company I was with got me to do all the one-off commissions and started getting more into sculptural stuff. And I thought, that's where I want to go. So I went to uni and studied art.
And did you do a fine arts degree?
Yes.
Or, right.
Yeah,
at USQ?
At
or
USQ. Well, I had the opportunity to go to Brisbane to Griffith, and I celebrated like hell when I got accepted because it was a huge step to go from being a mechanic. My God, they're going to accept me into art. And I celebrated too hard and got on a motorbike and ended up with a knee reconstruction and had to put off a year. Wow. And in that year, I thought, I don't think I'd like to go to Brisbane. I went to USQ. Right. So I moved from down that way up to Toowoomba.
Okay. So I think I talked about this with you one other time, but my mother in the 80s, she used to subscribe to this magazine called 9 to 5, and it was a self-published magazine out of Melbourne, and it was all about working people. It was poetry for working people.
Okay.
And one of the poems I remember reading was about a fellow who had been, just like you, a working person, and then as an adult student, he, I can't remember what he was studying, but he found he was really conflicted about where to drink at the pub. So when he was a working guy, he drank in the public bar.
Yeah.
And then when he was a student, all the students drank in the lounge. And there was just something so poignant and sort of practical and not practical about that, you know, you're torn between these two worlds of what's your identity.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. And the big cultural shock for me was hanging out in the Air Force where it's, you know, blokey culture. Mines, road working, blokey culture. Get into an art department and women.
Lots of
women. Predominantly right. Women studying. So in my year, I was one of 3 guys at one stage. And that's a bit of a shock because you got to learn to hold your tongue a bit.
Hold your tongue or get in touch with your sensitive side.
Exactly right.
Your emotional intelligence.
Yeah, exactly. You change.
Right.
20 years in a uni changes you. Yeah. And you go back to hang out with guys that you used to hang out with and you go, you can't say that. You know, it is
a bit politically incorrect. Yeah.
Well, it's more than that. It's an attitude.
Right.
It's more than just the glib wordy stuff. It is an attitude.
Yes.
And I actually got a lot of satisfaction out of teaching women at the uni to weld and do stuff that they didn't expect to be doing and realising that they can do it. That was not just me realising they can do it, that's obvious, but they realise that they don't have those boundaries too.
Yes, yeah.
It's very empowering in a way.
Yeah. Now, my eldest son has just finished a fine arts degree and had been making jewellery for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And now he's working on a construction site pouring cement. And I keep trying to sort of ask him, how are you finding that, love? You know, he's like, Mum, it's all right. Like he just doesn't want to entertain the idea that it's a different world, I suppose. But hopefully those two worlds are inching together. So Andrew, when you were sort of going from being the military guy, you know, these really sort of male dominated industries to something else, you were married then? You had a family?
No, I married fairly late. I married when I was about 36.
Okay.
I came to uni when I was 31.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So I met my wife at a uni sort of a party, and we were married a couple of years later and had kids, and we aren't together anymore.
Mm-hmm. But now you are married to
artist. Another artist,
Cindy.
Yeah, very good
and
painter.
What type of... she's a very good painter.
Yeah,
okay.
very traditional, not what you would expect to find at a uni art department, for instance.
So is Cindy working at the uni art department? No.
She works in a studio here, very directed, very self-directed, and, you know, wants the atelier type of old masters type skills.
Okay,
That's where she sees herself.
Do you think she would appreciate your father's nude pictures of your mother?
Yeah, probably would.
Similar sort of vein, you think?
Yeah, I guess so, yes. I mean, he was untaught. Cindy hasn't got any qualifications like that. Mm-hmm.
And I saw you on Friday night at the Toowoomba Regional Art Gallery, and it was at a wearable... what was the name?
The
of
Contemporary
Wearables exhibition.
Yeah.
What was your thoughts about it?
Oh, I've always loved going to that. It's a different skill set that I'm used to because I tend to work on bigger things like public sculptures and that, and very intimate, wearable things. And I'm just in awe of the skill and the patience and all that. But the main reason I was there, I was invited by my old friend Sarah, who I used to work with at the uni. Her and I had a collaboration going for a couple of years. We had an exhibition at Trag, and Trag actually bought some of our pieces. So now she's got another set of pieces in the gallery from the Contemporary Wearables.
I think the thing that I didn't realise was going to happen is part of the acquisition program, that some of the wearables from the exhibition have been bought into the Toowoomba collection, which I think is fantastic, because I think, well, to my mind, we don't value the arts. We don't as much as a society as we should. And
no, I agree with you.
And particularly when times are kind of strained like they are at the moment with the pandemic, and everyone's kind of
more and more of a luxury, but it's also more and more of a way of focusing, getting out of your own situation. The arts are very important.
Oh, for sure.
Whether that's reading or just looking at online stuff, it's still produced by an artist of some type. I mean, when I was in the Air Force, any town I went to, new city, I'd always go to the art gallery. And most of the time I'd have to go by myself because you'd mentioned to your mates you're off.
Yes, right. No, not going there. They were going down the pub.
Yeah, and even when I was working in the mines, I used to entertain the guys at the local pub by drawing and then getting beers for the drawings,
Yes.
So I was always drawing in that.
Yeah.
And when I came to uni, I did printmaking, which is a very drawing-based medium. That was my major, lithography and etchings and stuff.
Right, and that's what you sort of really loved? At
the time, and I've hardly touched it again. I got into sculpture more and public sculpture like Margaret Street, the big trees, that kind of stuff.
I was going to ask you about that. So they're called the cloud trees,
is
that correct? Yes, and there's two of them, bookending the western end of Margaret Street near Grand Central and
Victoria Street.
Up to Ruthven, isn't it? Yeah. And what year was that you
99.
made those? Okay. And what was the brief for that?
I think it was to try and find something that reflected Toowoomba's, the living in Toowoomba reality. And I was living up on Crown Street, up on the range at the time, with a big silky oak tree in the backyard, and you'd look out the window and next to the clouds, you just straight through the backyard, and the tree would disappear.
Okay.
So, to me, the trees and the clouds were the same. So lovely. That's why I came up with them.
Well, I love, at the moment, Toowoomba, well, we do at council, we have the public art reference group whenever there's a major piece of infrastructure being delivered. And out at Highfields Library, there's the park, I'm on that park, but down at Cathro Park, there is a beautiful sculpture from Kim Walmsley, which is a steel structure, and it's like a marker, the pin marker of where the rivers or the creeks are meeting. And I think it's a beautiful piece of work from Kim. But someone once I heard not nicely said, "Oh, that just looks like a big carrot."
You're always going to get that.
You're always going to
Actually, I put in a submission for that. I've just putting together a submission for Russell Street.
Okay, that's right. There will be another piece down there. Yeah. So I think when I look at the cloud trees, I'll look at them in a different way now and think about the history of it. Yeah. So I know a name like Andrew Macdonald, you must have a bit of Scottish heritage.
A bit.
So
on both sides.
On both sides, right. And are you taken to wearing a kilt every now and again?
I got married to Cindy in my kilt in Macdonald tartan, Yep.
And do you get a chance to wear the Donald tartan?
No, I've actually got too fat since I got married. I don't think I can get into it anymore.
Oh, well, that's what happens, isn't it? Yeah, you need someone to let it out, put a little bit of elastic in the back. Yeah. I think you sound to me like a risk taker. You've taken a lot of risks in your life. And
yes and no. I think staying in one job, like a very institutionalised job like the uni for 20 years, and now 10 years almost at Queensland Museum, I don't think I am a risk taker.
Right. Changing careers, I think, is pretty risky,
isn't it? I guess.
What do you think's the biggest risk you've taken in your life?
Jumping in a plane and joining the Air Force.
Really?
Yeah, just leaving everyone I knew where I grew up. Next thing, I'm in cities and towns I've never met anyone.
Right. And that was a risk that paid off for you, do you think?
Oh, it gave me a trade. It gave me a lot of confidence, probably too much confidence in my abilities, but it also gave me a sense of independence that I can go anywhere.
Did you have someone at that stage of your life saying, "Look, mate, I think what would be really good for you is if you settle down"? So that may have been or may not have been a good piece of advice. What do you reckon is the worst piece of advice anyone's ever given you?
get on that motorbike.
Oh, right, the motorbike with the knee construction. That was
No, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's, it's up to you to take the advice. It's not good or bad advice. It's just whether it suits you at the time.
Yeah, and also, is your glass half full, is your glass half empty? Is it?
Or is the glass twice as big as it needs to be?
Yes, yeah. Well, that's true too. So I'm going to finish off by asking you what are the top 3 things on your bucket list of things that you'd like to do.
I have...
Fit into the kilt. Looking good in the kilt.
That's a good one. I'd like to get this 4-wheel drive working again.
Right.
I mean, it's drivable, but it's not roadworthy.
Okay, yes.
And kit it out as a 4-wheel drive, as a camper.
Okay.
That's one.
It's no, what did you call your thing that you're restoring? The sleigh back or the
the buckboard.
No,
it's a Mitsubishi Delica.
Right.
The other thing I'd like to do is one more big exhibition, a solo, using things that I scavenged from the foundry before it was bulldozed.
Oh, yes, yeah.
So I want to do a foundry exhibition.
Wonderful.
And the other one is I'd like to take Sydney to New Zealand, where I was born.
Right. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
I think there's plenty of time, and those 3 things are all achievable. Yeah. Well, Andrew, it's been a pleasure to talk to you and hear about your journey from the little boy in Western Australia to the guy here. I think the thing that if I was to talk to those volunteers that you work with, I'd love to hear some of their stories about the difference it makes for them to go there every day and to work with a group of colleagues and
that is good for them. Yeah.
And the discovery of fixing something and ending up with a thing at the end of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think you're doing great things, not
Thank
only
you
in your
very
own
much.
life but in other people's lives as well.
Yeah.
Thanks,
I appreciate
Andrew.
it, Megan. Thank you.
That's it for this week. Thanks for joining me on Big Little Small Talk. I hope you can make the time to join me next week. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on your favourite podcast app.